Yay.
And Kurt is just about to connect as well here, as soon as he gets unmuted.
There we go. How's that?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
So with that, I would say we can, convene the meeting, and it is 5 minutes after 4. And I trust that all of you had received the agenda that Rebecca sent out several days ago. And we were supposed to have Russ with us as well. I don't see him on here yet. Courtney, if you're hearing me, that Russ Tierney is also scheduled to be part of this call. He's from Whitewater, so if his name shows up on there, please include him and please open him up and let him in on the call.
Yep, we'll do.
Okay, thank you. So I think in this case, Kurt and I can probably start this because this was, as you will recall at our last meeting, we talked about having a meeting with Mike and with Russ with the goal of kind of hammering out some issues around the meter situation as well as the Scada system. So Neil, Kurt and I did meet by phone with Russ and with Mike Travato on Friday, during which we talked about the possible options with the replacement of the water meters. I'm going to ask Kurt to chime in on these as well if I miss anything. But we talked, one of the concerns was that, as you may recall, Whitewater was offering an option where they would purchase the meters and that we would then pay them back over a 10-year period. They would purchase and install the new meters, and that we would pay them back over a 10-year period. The cost being somewhere around 135 to 140,000, and we had left it as of the call on Friday that Russ was going to get back to us as to what the annualized amount would be over a 10-year period. Mike was also going to look into the procurement requirements with the state to ensure that we don't do anything that violates state requirements regarding that. The idea being that we're already under contract with Whitewater, and whether or not there's a possibility of extending that contract to include the purchase, the meters, and repaying Whitewater over that period of time for those. Kurt, was there anything else that you can recall from that?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, I think you did a great job of summarizing that, Jim. I mean, obviously the big question was just understanding how we need to go through the procurement process. It's a significant amount of money. There's options that the board will probably want to consider as far as potentially lease with an option to buy, or whether it gets funded out of SRF, or there are a variety of ways that the town could finance it if the town wants to do it. So we asked Mike to kind of go through and see if he could do some research on that to, better inform us as to, what we need to do to make sure that we're complying, and also that may be in the best interest of the town from a financing standpoint, because the town can finance this too. So, we raised that with Russ. And I think I guess that was kind of the main points.
So yeah, what I didn't see here, and I should just clarify, like you're describing, there were two options here. There was one to kind of lease it through lease to buy through Whitewater, and the second was for the town, for us, the town to go out outright at, purchase, and I put this out to bid, to purchase the meters and have them installed, and then but we'd have to figure out which way was the best option for the town, and that's where we were. That's how we left this on Friday in the call. So we still need some information.
Yeah, and the other thing was to, Mike and Dan are going to have to think about, how we would go about funding this too. That's an open question.
So that's where the issue of the meters stands at this point. We also talked about when this would need to happen, and as I recall, Russ's position on that was that this could. We don't have to do this right now. I mean, we could push this out for several months. It's not like we are that the meters are failing or anything like that. It's just that we do need to make a decision about this because Mueller is no longer going to support the meters that the meters that we're currently using, at least except for the Neptune commercial meters that we have. So. That's where it stood.
Yeah, and his recommendation was that pushing it out a year is not going to be would not be the end of the world. So we certainly have time to do our research, do our homework, and as a board take a look at the options before making any recommendations.
Okay, Russ is now connecting via audio here, and maybe Courtney can get him his audio on for it. There we go. Russ?
I'm here.
Hey, Russ. Okay. So
Sorry I'm late.
That's right. Kurt and I just kind of lived through the call that we had on Friday, and I think we pretty much covered what we discussed, and that the next kind of the to-do list here is that you are going to be coming back to us with some numbers of the annualized cost on if we went the route of, picking up the kind of like what Kurt described as kind of a lease to purchase through Whitewater, what that would be on an annualized basis. And then the alternative would be outright purchase of this through a competitive bid process, and then we'd have to figure out the funding for actually the funding for either of those options. And Kurt was just pointing out that you had said that we could probably delay a final decision on this for probably a year, that there isn't any major concern about having to get this done tomorrow.
I did preface that with I wanted to talk to Rebecca because she's the one doing the billing. So I didn't want to speak for her during the meeting.
Well, she's not on the call with us this afternoon, Russ,
okay.
But we can check in with her on that. But the last that I knew, she was, reasonably comfortable with the billing with Penachuk.
Okay.
And it's just those few meters that have to be, manually read at this point.
Okay.
And the other item that we talked about in the call on Friday was so we're still waiting from you for for some numbers there, and Mike's going to be looking into the procurement requirements and let us know what he finds out about that.
Correct. So if you would remember the 5 years,
right?
The estimate would be $2,600 a month.
Okay.
So if you do the math out.
Okay. And that includes the interest, interest on, what about if it were 10-year?
It would be $1,500 a month.
1,500 for 10. Okay. Well, that's good to know. And that was with the purchase of.
We'd buy 400 meters.
Right.
Install them all in the first year, and then we would amortize it over the entire contract year.
Okay.
Oh.
So we'd be essentially looking at 18,000 a year over the 10 years.
Yeah, 1,500 times 12 is, yeah, around 18, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll wait to hear back from Mike. Figures out on this before, because we have to make a recommendation to the select board on this system.
Like I said in the call Friday, I completely understand everything. It's there. I offered it, and let's just, whatever we got to do, we'll do. I have no problem at all.
Oh, and so the other issue was the Scada system,
Yes.
and that's it's still, even though we had actually at a prior meeting, we had approved a motion to go ahead and recommend to the select board that we purchase the system for I think it was 49,500.
Yep.
I mean, there's still concern about one, source of funding for this, and
Yep.
two, as to whether or not this could be rolled into the improvements that we are hoping to make with the affordable housing project.
Yep.
So
I can tell you the same thing with that. After this week, we had a problem at the tank again. So the SCADA system went down to the tank. What made that worse was the SCADA system was down at DPW again.
Yeah.
We couldn't log in remotely to reboot everything.
What happened at DPW?
The computer just shuts off every once in a while. Like it's what we log into to look at SCADA.
Right.
And periodically, either the power trips out or something happens in DPW and it just goes off. I think a few times people shut it off by accident, thinking they were leaving, and it's supposed to stay on all the time.
Wait, do you know when that was? When did you?
Yeah, it was just 2 days ago.
Okay, yeah. You know what? There was a power outage, a couple areas in Wellfleet over 2 days ago.
So I guess what I'm saying is we got to get an upgrade and get it moved out of there so everybody has better access for SCADA. And this upgrade will allow us to run things from the stations instead of from the computer at DPW.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
So like I said last week, I changed my mind on splitting it up. I think it's just there's too many little bugs in it right now that it could cause us problems. You know what I mean?
But the reality is, in all likelihood, we're going to have to take this on without waiting for the Lawrence Road project, because that's going to be a while out, even if we're able to do it. So we have to fix it. Continue with the motion that we already made, which was to recommend to the select board that we go ahead with a full price on this. The other point was whether or not we should be taking this out to competitive bid.
For the SCADA?
For the SCADA.
You can, but you can use it as it's what do they call it? It's a service provider. It's you could, but you might have to change a lot of things to put it up to competitive bid. So whoever installed it, I believe, can service it and do upgrades, but that's up to the town to decide on the competitive.
Well, that's Butch. That would be Butch.
Yes, correct.
So then, you know what, I would want to go back to Mike and just say, look, we just need to agree that we can go ahead to do this.
Yep.
Using our current supplier for the system. And you pointed out, and we understand this, that he is essentially the provider for this service here.
Correct.
He does it for Eastham, and I don't know, does he do Orleans as well?
Orleans, Eastham, Chatham. Yeah, most of the Lower Cape he does. Yeah. And he's right there in Truro. That's you know what I mean? He's right there. You got a problem, he's there in 20 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So So I just want to go back and talk with Mike about
Yep.
this, and at our next meeting, we can just confirm that recommendation.
Yeah.
And take it to the select.
And we can, and if you want, I can pay Butch and we can spread the payment. We're gonna pay Butch anyways, we are, and I can spread the payments out. So you guys decide, I can spread them out. We
Okay.
start our new fiscal year, May 1st.
Right,
So as long as I get it paid in a year, my boss won't say a word.
okay,
So just keep that in mind.
all right. Is there anything else, Russ?
No, well two looks better. We pumped it to waste again. So those two wells look better clean wise. So I don't think there's an issue there.
Okay,
But let's get the station back up and running and see what it does from there.
okay.
Can we see that those wells are pumped regularly as a routine? Yeah, I think Neil would agree that a well that is not pumped regularly is not a good thing.
Yeah, no.
It's especially true with an iron well, an iron cased well.
Yep, I have it. They should be in the logbook, but I've told them my expectations is at least once a month, maybe twice a month, flush them off. So the only one I know that's not getting flushed right off now is well number 3, which has the control.
Will that be taken care of in the new system?
Yes. Yep, we're gonna
Thank you.
move everything. We're gonna move everything from that well because a lot of the controls are out at the well. We're gonna move them right inside the building with everything else, so everything will be right there.
And then it'll go through a routine pumping.
Yes, correct.
He has been pumping it regularly,
Yes, yes, they have. Not. I would like to pump more. I'm with Neil, so I did set my expectations.
All right, I'm looking to see what else we should have on here. The meeting agenda. Oh, one of the things that I did want to talk about with everybody is on the plastic water bottle ban. I did talk with Mike about this, and Dan is out, as you may know. He would have death in the family, so I have not been able to connect with him regarding our budget. But it seemed pretty likely that we're not going to be able to use any of our funds to assist them in the installation of a water bottle refilling station that they had hoped for. So the question is, if we go back to them now, what is our position on whether do we support or not support the idea of a ban on the sale, in the commercial sale of single-use plastic water bottles? That would go into effect as of June of 2021.
Well, my theory is that it would be good for our business. You'd have to drink our water. On the other hand, I think unless everybody on the Outer Cape does it, it's going to be a mess.
Well, I do know that Brewster has, I think, now backed off from it somewhat, that they're asking for that to be tabled. At least that's what I heard. So it may be moot. I mean, if you're right, Tom, that's a concern that we had before, that we don't want to be the only one out there saying we're not going to accept this. But it's a year out. That's the one thing. It's not this summer, but about 2021.
I'd like to see that tabled for us as well.
Would you?
Yeah, I really would.
Kurt,
I think so.
Kurt or Neil, do you have a position on that?
No, no.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be, I don't know how you, enforce something like that with just Wellfleet.
Right.
The bottles primarily are sold at, Stop and Shop and elsewhere. It's sort of like, I mean, I think it's aspirational in any event. and, you know, as Tom said, certainly it should encourage, one would hope it would encourage, you know, use of local water, you know, our water, which is better than what's coming out of that bottle anyway, but.
But I sense that there is concern about even, you know, going ahead with this or recommending it at this time. And the other thing is as to when we're going to have town meeting. I mean, this may be something that's not going to come up until the fall anyway. So.
Jim, this is Courtney. There's a question in the chat about, is this voting on this or is this put off anyway into the fall annual town meeting? If this is about the commercial single-use plastic water bottle ban, it is currently in the warrant for the meeting as Article 30. So.
Right. I know it was in the warrant.
Yeah.
But the question is, do we know when was there a decision made yet as to when a town meeting will happen?
That's tonight at the 6 p.m. select board meeting, which is happening after this, and that date will be decided then. I have not heard anything as to what the warrant will be. It hasn't been approved yet as is or anything like that. So whatever motions were made by the select board to recommend the insertion of these articles, I believe it was March 17th, all of those still stand as far as I know.
So
well,
Jim, are they asking us for a recommendation? Is that what it is?
They were asking for two things from us from the last meeting they were at. And that was, one, it was for a recommendation to approve a water bottle ban, and two, to help fund the installation of a filling station at Town Hall, and that would be at a cost to us of like $3,000. So I'm saying we don't have it at this point. So those were the two questions. But I agree, and if in fact that we don't know when town meeting is going to be yet, then I say we wait until we know what the status of the town meeting is.
So it sounds like what, maybe this would work for the board. My thought is we would just, we could just do a motion to, reserve judgment for town meeting, and just let town, not take a position on it.
Yeah. Okay.
Call from Q.
I don't know who that is, so I can't mute them. Oh, it was Neil.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll table this then.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, the idea of having the drinking fountain at Town Hall, I think, is a separate issue. I don't necessarily see it as related to the plastic water bottle.
Well,
Good point.
Part of it that impacted on us was that they had asked for assistance with the installation cost. And
Yeah, well, that's a different matter. Yeah.
That, over a year ago we were asked on that, and that makes sense. We want to support this. So anyway, obviously we don't have the money now, so that's a moot point. Okay. So it's tabled at this point.
Okay.
Good.
The other item that was on here was a discussion about our budget with the town administrator. And since Dan has been out with the death in the family, I have not had a chance to talk with him. Still, I'm hoping to get a time to talk with him, just to get a sense from him as to where he sees how our budget may be shaped up over the next several months. So that's so I said to be continued. That would be at a subsequent meeting.
Yeah, I believe I saw in the paper something about him being willing to stay on after the end of June.
Well, he
Is
said
that correct?
Yes, you're correct. Yeah.
He said that earlier on as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a couple of other things is there any communications anybody would like to report on?
None that I've had.
Okay. Kateri or Kurt, either one of you?
No, I have a question though. I didn't, we had a report of what the 5-year, how much per month if it were, if the water meters were funded for 5 years. Was it 2,200 or 2,600?
2,600.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So I know that there was a question that came up about the reporting from the wastewater committee. I know we had a very, I would say, quite detailed report from Kurt some time ago with regard to the status of what's going on in the wastewater committee. I mean, I know it's not something that we take action on, and I don't know if this is something that we want to include in future agendas, or if it's just, as Kurt feels that it's important to bring something to our attention. If that's when we would discuss it either as an agenda item or as part of communication.
Yeah, I think the issue there was that, Judah Hearn had raised a concern about the level of information from wastewater that gets shared with the Board of Water Commissioners, and to what extent the Board of Water Commissioners want or need additional information. And so, it was just that interest that came from, Judah Hearn, and so it was raised to us, and we wanted to just make the board aware that concern was raised, and to see how the board felt about it, if any one way or another.
Okay. I see that Jude is on this call right now, and if I'm going to offer to open up to her and let her speak if she would like.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I appreciate that. The issue was not only communication between the wastewater committee, although that's important, especially in terms of the consultant, as the public was told. We were still unclear about that. But it was specifically about Kurt's comments to a member of the wastewater committee for attending the Herring River Technical Committee. And, that is what I actually took issue with Kurt. So I won't get off topic, but that led me to looking at your committee's minutes and agendas and meetings that were canceled and stuff like that. And I communicated with Rebecca about that, and hopefully she's able to fix that when she's back or soon. Because, for instance, your January 21st minutes aren't up there. It's just a mistake. But in that meeting, you talked about the list for the consultant, which you then were to talk to the Board of Selectmen about. But actually, at the Board of Selectmen meeting, you really talked about, the logistics of the system and not the consultant. It wasn't included in the packet, so the public's still left wondering what's going on. And I know that Catherine asked way back in June, let's get going on this. I followed your minutes, so in October you talked about it, November, but still we're not privy to what it is exactly you're looking for, and I don't know that the wastewater committee was also told where you are in that process.
All right.
So the way that I understand this working at the moment is Dan has a specific amount in mind for what would be available for wastewater consulting, and a specific amount that would be in mind for water board. And so those discussions are ongoing in terms of what the scope of work could look like within the budgets that are being outlined. So
Right.
You know, it's,
Sorry, Tom, may I speak?
Are you asking me? This
Yes.
is Jim.
Oh, sorry, Jim. Sorry. Jim, may I speak?
Yeah.
So in regards to that, you know, how much is for wastewater and how much is for water? I don't know that the wastewater knows that that's what's going on, do they? Because Scott Horsley, you know, it's unclear how much he's getting paid to finish what we need him to do and whether that money will be used towards that. And, you know, where are these conversations happening, I guess? The reason why I say this is because I want to remind everyone that the public was denied the right to vote on appropriating this money at the ballot. That is very important. I was irate that that happened at town meeting, and so this is our only way to keep track of really what's going on. We were denied something we were promised, and it was not cool.
Yeah, you understand that wasn't that we weren't part of that, so.
yeah, our responsibility at this point is, you know, at least in terms of the wastewater responsibility, I mean, I try to keep the Board of Water Commissioners informed to the extent that they want to be informed about wastewater matters, but clearly that's not within the Board of Water Commissioners, you know, charter, so to speak. We talk to each other, you know, basically in terms of my discussions with this board and with the wastewater committee to the extent that there's any conflicts. But, you know, the wastewater committee's ultimate responsibility is to get a watershed permit. That's what Scott's working on. The scope of that, you know, is going to follow a path that DEP requires. And so we're not really in control necessarily of the process. You know, Brian Dudley has made some requests to the town of Wellfleet that are very expensive. So, you know, we've got an RFP on the street right now to further characterize the Wellfleet transfer station site as a wastewater treatment facility. We have bids back at this point that we're evaluating. And, you know, once we evaluate those bids, then we would know roughly what we'd be looking at for cost as part of monies that were allocated by town meeting. So again, you know, Jude, we don't control, you know, I don't control the administrative process. You know, those decisions are made by, you know, town administration and town meeting. You know, our job is just to implement and to, you know, meet the requirements of the 208 process and the Clean Water Act. So that's the wastewater part of it. And then we have had discussions, many discussions between Water Board and the Wastewater Committee with regard to how a wastewater plan and ultimate operation of a water system could merge, and specifically coming from a recommendation that Scott Horsley and some others have made, including a consultant that was here a couple of years ago looking at water and wastewater in the town of Wellfleet. And they suggested that staff be hired to oversee long-term management of both the water and wastewater systems. So that would be implementation of a wastewater program. And then more specifically with regard to the water system, managing, you know, a long-term plan. For example, right now the Water Board is now facing, you know, $200,000 of unanticipated expenses with regard to replacing a Scada system and water meters, both of those completely unanticipated and unexpected. And so, you know, those are the type of things that, in terms of long-term planning, we really need to get our arms around. Also, the water system needs to begin to accumulate some level of reserve so that when things like this come up, which will, as the system ages, that we've got a you know, a process in place to be able to better manage that going forward. And then we also have a fundamental financial problem in which the system itself isn't paying for itself. So the long-term financial model really needs to be addressed as well. So there's an awful lot of things on both sides of the ledger in terms of, what needs to happen. And Scott's suggestion was that there are a number of people that are coming out of programs at Tufts and at Yale and other universities where they are in fact taking programs in water and wastewater. It's sort of combined at the academic master's level. And so he thought that would be something that we should look at, that we should definitely be considering.
Jim? Kurt, where are these conversations happening? Because, the public doesn't know them. And I'm specifically talking about the 125,000. And as you say, yes, all of these new costs in this expensive system, we knew that, which was why we were questioning why we're allotting 125,000 for something we don't know what it is. We still don't know what it is. I'm not going to talk about these huge expenses. You guys do that. It's awesome, but I'm specifically talking about this job that everyone was questioning. It's still unclear, and that needs to be more clear. If you have a conversation with him off the record, you need to bring that to one of the two committees you're on and make it public record with documents attached.
I'm not talking about anything off the record. We have an RFP that the wastewater committee put together for a consultant to evaluate the transfer station. So that's the only thing.
No, you were talking about Scott Horsley saying that this should be combined, and you've had lots of conversations. Well, it's still unclear to the public. That needs to be clear. I know you're evaluating these other firms. For instance, are any of them candidates for the water as well?
No, these are engineering consultants that would be coming in and doing a scope of work that's specific to characterizing whether the transfer station site has enough capacity to take 400,000 gallons per day of wastewater effluent.
I understand that, but one of the bids came in at 30,000, one came in at 300,000. Are any of those? Can we use that money for that consultant? Where is that money going to come from?
That money is available through the town meeting authorization of 120,000.
Okay, so if the cheapest one for just that test you're talking about is 30,000, and wastewater takes that, that leaves you with less. So, I'm just asking these questions because as they evolve, I'd like to know, and I think a lot of people would. And we don't have a list of what you were looking for. I don't know if it's a financial model what you need help with first. I don't know if the very wonderful man who Paul Millett, who was great, was he paid by part of this money? That would be great. But we need an accounting because, as you know, we spent $400,000 on Scott Horsley and still didn't get our key deliverable. And we still don't have accounting for that.
Jude, excuse me. We haven't spent 400,000 on Scott.
So show us the accounting in a clear way, because a lot of people are still wondering where that money went, Kurt.
That's not.
Is this really a water?
It's not really a water board issue.
Okay, well then I'll ask it tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock.
But it's not on our agenda, Jude. It's not on our agenda for tomorrow either. If you have questions like that, you can certainly ask the town accountant.
I will, Gene Ferrari. You should all listen to his presentation before the finance committee if you want to get scared.
All right. Anything more on that, Kurt?
No, I just, it probably would be helpful to just hear from the board if they feel adequately informed about wastewater and if the information sharing has been, enough, not enough.
Well, one thing I would say that that 120,000 that was appropriated back at town meeting last year, the intent was it would be shared between wastewater and water commission, and that was for planning purposes for the although I'll tell you, I had a tough time with this after that meeting because there were so many different opinions about how those funds should be used, whether or not they should even be used. And then, several months later, I, together with Elaine McElroy applied for funding to assist us with the expansion of the water system for the Lawrence Road project, the affordable housing project, and we received a grant of $100,000. I think it was at that point that when we received that grant, it was for engineering fees, and in fact, the first portion of those fees, of those funds, approximately $5,000, was used to pay environmental partners, Paul Millette, for the estimates that they did for the various options for for going forward with upgrading the water system to accommodate the Lawrence Road project. So we have essentially a substantial portion of that grant still available to us. And the intent would be that it would be used for engineering costs. That's what we asked for from the state. That's what we got. So I can appreciate why then it came back that the amount of the 120,000 that was appropriated at the town meeting, that the majority of that would go for wastewater and not for consultant for the water system. So that's where that stands at this point. Anyway, I think Jude has another question.
No, just back in June, Kurt said when Catherine asked about this and, that Courtney had to remind Kurt in October to get on it. Someone mentioned Justina had met someone at a meeting, and when I first met Justina, she thought someone from Yale would be appropriate. I'm wondering who's had discussions with Justina and why isn't she at any of your meetings, and can you share with us her ideas?
I talked to Justina about this, and I pursued the company she was talking about. And Kurt and I met with someone from that company. So we do have one contact that is potential for a firm that could assist us with some consulting issues around the financial model.
Great.
That's all that we have at this point.
Great.
We have not gone any further than that because there are these other issues related to the water system now that are in front of us that are very substantial that we need to address.
Exactly.
As you've heard on the call right now about the fact that we have to take care of, one, the water meter situation, and two, the computer control system for the water system. And these are very expensive items. And although these were not items that are on the agenda right now, I think that if we have to set priorities going forward, we can. But I would say that I feel like everybody has been trying to find resources here to keep the system going, and that's really what I think we're concerned about at this point. We're in a very difficult situation. The town is. We all understand this. And we need to stick together on this now to make this work for the town.
I agree.
Thank you, Jim.
We have some serious financial concerns up ahead, and I'm glad you said that, Jim, but I don't know that everyone else is conscious of that. And the taxpayers were conscious of it last April. I'll tell you that.
Huh.
Okay.
Wait till October.
Well, I don't know what's going to happen. So I do not have a crystal ball here. I'm not going to speculate on that. I think all we can do is just continue to move forward. And that's what I'm asking that we do. If there's nothing more on this issue, I think, that it really is a wastewater issue. If you need information, please discuss that or bring your concerns to the wastewater commission.
It's also about your public documents. Thank you.
I'm sorry?
It's about the public documents not being listed. It's about meetings being canceled. And I'm glad that I've made an improvement with that. I think everyone will be well served.
You know what? We can take this offline, Jude, at another time. I'm happy to talk to you more about this outside of a meeting.
It's not necessary. I talked to Rebecca. I'm just saying that everyone will notice the improvement.
All right, thank you. All right, we have some minutes to approve. The minutes of February 18th, 2020. Has everybody had a chance to read them?
I have.
Let me put it this way, is there anybody who has not had a chance to read them? Okay. All right, I would just want to do one thing on those minutes that I would ask to have recorded, that we need to add the date of that meeting. It was not on the minutes, so we just need to add that it was February 18th, 2020. Any other corrections or observations in the minutes?
No, I noticed that too, but other than that, I think they're complete.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Anybody?
Oh, we have
Aye.
to go individually, don't we?
Yeah. Any
I got my
opposed?
hand up.
Okay. All right, the next set of minutes are Tuesday, the 14th of April. I'm sorry, the Tuesday, the 31st
March.
of March.
Yeah, yeah.
Any corrections to those minutes?
None.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
So move.
Second.
Okay. Kurt seconded. So unless I hear that, I would assume all in favor. If not, please indicate no.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then the third one was Tuesday, the 14th of April.
Oh.
Okay. I have one change to those minutes, and that is that the discussion around the single-use plastic water bottle ban, it would not go into effect until June of 2021, not this summer. So that needs to be corrected.
Oh, okay.
And the second correction on that was that this was a discussion around the water meter proposal from Whitewater. That Whitewater was offering either a 5 or 10-year payback period on that, not just 5 years, but it was either 5 or 10. Any other observations on those minutes?
Just a question, Jim. I guess it has to do with the Russ's update. Right in this minutes, it's under that discussion for the new meters. The quote is for 135,000, and I think it's 140 now.
I saw that. Russ, do you want to comment on that? So that was installation, is the purchase and the installation of the meters. Is it 135 or is it 140? Is Russ still with us?
I'm here. I'm muted. Am I all set now?
Yeah.
Hold on.
So, Russ, would you want to amend that to 140?
Yeah,
or is
I mean, I have 135, 190. I think we were on the phone on Monday. I didn't have it in front of me, and we were just talking and just said 140. I would just leave it at 140 because, I mean, we're talking a year. The price could go up a little bit if we wait.
Yeah.
Just call it 140. It's better than, you know what I mean?
Okay. All right, so we'll change it to 140.
Yep.
All right.
So
So
with
do I hear a
that,
vote?
yeah, with that amendment, I would move that we approve these, the April 14th, 2020 minutes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
And unless I hear otherwise, I assume we're all in favor of approving those minutes.
Aye, yes.
Aye.
Yeah.
So, that's, I think, it. Okay, so I do not have recommendations yet for an agenda for the next meeting. Would ask that if you have items that you would like to put on the agenda for the next meeting, please email me or Rebecca that, and we'll move from there. I'm suggesting that for that meeting, since this is pretty much like almost the beginning of May, so rather than meeting the first week of May, I'm suggesting that we take this out 2 weeks from then and meet on the 19th, I think it is.
Did you say the 19th?
19th of May.
Okay.
4 o'clock?
Yeah, 4 o'clock is fine. Is that?
It seems to be working.
Yeah.
Yeah, I may start to get more of an issue with work conflict, but let's go ahead and schedule it that way.
All right, good.
Neil might get busy too.
Yeah, Neil will probably as well. So.
Bring your computer in your truck.
Are there any other issues before we adjourn?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Courtney.
You're welcome, guys. Take care.
Right.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.